Are you a Muslim who's married or looking to get married? I'm sure you've heard that more than 50% of Muslim marriages are ending in a divorce. Now that's unfortunate, but there's help out there. My name is Hiba Mirza. I'm a registered psychotherapist with a specialization in Islamic counseling. And I've been working with hundreds of couples building healthy, happy, strong marriages. Sign up for the course that I just completed with Happy Strong Family to foolproof your marriage and make sure that you have all the right tools and all the right skills to lead a healthy, happy, strong life with your partner.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to our Happy Strong Family podcast. I'm so excited to be here with Sister Hiba and Brother Zaid, and they are here from Halal Match. Halal Match helps people search for a compatible spouse, and there's so much that we're going to get to learn today, inshallah, about what it means to actually look for a spouse, what difficulty that the Muslim Ummah is facing, and I'll pass it over to you to give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, Sister Hiba.
Sure, yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum. Hiba, originally from Palestine, and you Canadian. What do? We help single Muslims, like you said, find love, find halal love, get married, settle down. And it is a struggle in the Muslim community. So we're trying anything we can to help the Muslims.
Yeah. I remember reading that you had a background in psychology, right?
Zaid has psychology background. I have Sharia background.
What is it?
Sharia.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Nice. Mashallah, Sharia, yeah. But Zaid, how about you?
So Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, rabbi shrah li sadri wassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So a little introduction about Halal Match. Where do we start? Halal Match is just something that was born out of our personal journeys and struggles trying to get married. When I was talking to Hiba, I was about 9 years into my own personal search, and I was just so frustrated. There were just most of the services that were out there were not conducive to Muslims looking for a halal relationship, right? Marriage. And so my thing was that, alhamdulillah, like we finally found each other, and I said, we need to build something better, something that's more conducive to our generation of Muslims. I was getting sick of the rishta aunties, the apps that was more designed for dating than marriage. So when I pitched it to Hiba, it was like, yeah, let's talk about this. And then we kind of put it on the back burner in the beginning, and then we got married, and then COVID happened, and then we had some setbacks. But then, alhamdulillah, when we reconnected, we were like, let's make this happen. So alhamdulillah, we're about nearly 3 years in running Halal Match.
Yeah,
mashallah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
How has your experience been with Halal Match? Like, what does it look like? What does if someone's like, oh, I'm interested in joining Halal Match, what would that process look like?
First of all, they would have a video call with us. We get to know them, assess maturity, explain how the service works, see if they're a good fit for us, we're a good fit for them, see what they're looking for. And then if we decide to take them on and they want to join, then we have them fill out a registration form. It's a very lengthy. It's not what do you guys call it? Not a biodata.
Right.
It's more like personality assessment. And based on
it takes
that,
nearly an hour to complete.
They have to submit a video, introduction of themselves, some pictures. Everything stays private, and we match them manually. So no AI, no algorithms. Every word is read by the two of us.
Beautiful.
And alhamdulillah, when we find a match for them, we introduce the match to them over a double date, which means either we take them out for dinner or we introduce them over a virtual call. We are there on the call, on the date, making sure everything's halal, Sharia compliant. And it's just fun, honestly. Like that human aspect these days is missing from apps and swiping and all of that. The human connection, it's missing. So we try to provide that.
Yeah, the important thing to note is that, sometimes matchmakers, they'll just like, oh, here, I found someone for you, and you go talk to them. You go figure it out. And it's just really nerve-wracking. What do you do? What do you say? How do you navigate this whole process? So the important thing that we wanted to include in our service was the double date approach, where we sit with the clients, we facilitate the introductions, they play some games that we've designed, and we make sure that there's like no mom or dad sitting there. It's just the clients, it's just us So it's halal while at the same time we're removing that awkwardness. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand. But when you say double date, you mean that you two would be there and the couple would be there as well.
Yes.
So it's like all together.
Yes.
It's all together.
Is
Yes.
the communication all together? The games are played all together? How does that work?
So we
So, yeah, go
we
ahead.
sit with them for the first like 20, 30 minutes just to make
Play
them
some
feel comfortable.
icebreakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I play some icebreakers and then we move to another table. We keep our eye on them, of course, and we give them some questions, some activities to get to know each other in a comfortable way, you would say. So instead of just like interrogating each other,
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're even asking the other person questions.
So we provide them
Exactly.
tools. So our games that we've spent months designing is what we give them to. Through those games is what they learn about each other.
Oh, that's really cool. What's
Yeah.
like an example of a game that you use? I love like
Ah.
personality test games.
Yeah,
we have
it's
so
so much
many
fun.
games.
Yeah, so much fun.
Um,
Like
Yeah.
for example, we have a game called Dream House.
Yeah.
So Dream
Yes.
House is we give them a list of items that you need to build your house and decorate your house, and they together have to build their own house with the budget that we provide.
Yeah.
And they can choose, for example, between, I don't know, a Walmart mattress or a Tempur-Pedic mattress, or something from Marketplace, or something really fancy. Or so when they play this together, they get an understanding of what is more important to the other person. Are they more on the bougie side? Are they more on the frugal side?
Right. Like what kind of lifestyle are they expecting in a
Comfort,
marriage?
is it what's more important? Is it comfort, or is
Simplicity.
it simplicity, or is it
Mm.
looks? Or so it's just an example.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really cool. That's
Yeah,
really
we
cool.
also give them like 3 options. They can use a credit card with no limit, or they can borrow from mom, they can borrow from dad. So you also see how they deal with the topic of money and financial responsibility.
Wow, that's really
Exactly.
cool. From the get-go.
Yeah.
From the
Just-
get-go.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no what's your favorite color.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
I was at a bridal shower yesterday, and it's my best friends, and we were playing this game like called like it was like a sort of like a bingo, like do you know her best? And I didn't know any of the answers to any of the questions except for the last vacation because I went on that vacation with her, and I was like, I feel like I don't know you well enough, but it's the little things we don't know because our friendship was so organic and authentic that it's like these are sometimes it's just what's your favorite color is not the right first question.
Right.
It's something
right.
you don't even remember about someone because everything else is so much deeper.
Yeah.
So I like that for you guys. It's like, let's just go straight to the dream house. That's really cool.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of games we give. Another game that I really enjoy is tell me your priorities.
Yeah.
So for example, we have a list of categories. One of the categories is friend, and within friend there are 4 characteristics.
Yeah.
I think one of them is empathy, loyalty, acceptance, and you have to rank the characteristics from most important to least important. An important thing to note is that there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Everybody prioritizes certain characteristics over others.
Yeah.
But it invites conversation. Why do you prioritize loyalty over acceptance, for example? And so they have this conversation about, what's
Their
most important in a
values,
friend.
yeah.
And then we have other categories too, like money and
Husband, spouse,
things
vacation,
like that.
wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have there been successful matches through Halal Match?
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, alhamdulillah,
Yeah. We
of
just
course.
attending the nikah of 2 of our clients last year, last December.
Amazing.
Yeah.
One
That's
of our
awesome.
proudest moments, honestly.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
It's not the
amazing.
only success story, but
Yeah.
it's the only one we've been invited to the wedding.
That's Oh,
Yeah.
you don't take it personally. Like, okay, it happens. Let it go. That's awesome.
No,
Mashallah.
they invited us. Yeah, and then alhamdulillah, we had another marriage where the girl was only 19
Oh, wow.
and the guy was 24.
Yeah.
And yeah, alhamdulillah, the girl was very mature for her age. We were a bit surprised and like worried, like, we were thinking, are we going to find somebody for her? But alhamdulillah, we found the right guy for
They're
her.
the most mature people
And
we've
very
ever
mature
met.
for their age, and we were so happy.
That's amazing. We were just talking about this off air that, well, there's a concept of age right now in the current society where it's like the age of getting married. I feel like, especially like just as being 24, I can see that people are pushing it further and further. You can just get married. You can just get married later. How do you feel about that?
It's one of the things that really frustrates me. I know you got a lot to say about that.
I don't blame people, honestly, because I feel it's society today dictates these new norms
Yeah.
that you
Mhm.
have to finish your education, you have to be strong and independent, you can't rely on a man, and all of that. And it's just the expectations that society have these days.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes even parents, they push for that narrative because
Exactly.
they want the best interest for their son or daughter, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, reality is very different, especially coming from people who are immersed in that world. Reality is so different. To us girls, education and career independence is very important, but to guys, it's not. Your education is for yourself.
Yeah.
They are looking for somebody who
Stop a
is younger. Just got to be honest. They are looking for somebody who's younger, who, besides having successful career, who's also going to dedicate time to take care of the kids, the house, husband, all of that. And there is dichotomy today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I really appreciate you mentioning that, because I think people shy away from saying that, well, at the end of the day, there are women who are, they're literally saying, nope, I'm going to put my career and education first. And then the men are looking for younger women right now to get married who are like, they're going to be balancing both.
Yes.
And it's just, it's very difficult.
Yeah, the problem is, I think there's multiple layers to the problem. It's not just women delaying marriage for the purpose of their education, but it's also parents that are not, having that conversation early on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the parents that are prioritizing education before marriage.
Mhm.
And you need to have some sort of job security or some sort of safety net, because what if your marriage doesn't work out? And that's not exactly the right approach. And I think we get so scared and traumatized from all the horrible divorce stories that are happening.
Yeah.
Right, where a woman was just left with a child, and now she's divorced and she didn't finish her education.
Sad.
So there is a way to navigate that.
Yeah.
And that prioritizing education or treating the two things mutually exclusive is not the approach.
Just the other day, I was listening to this radio show, CBC Radio, and they were discussing the topic of, apparently there's a new trend called trad wife, traditional wives. They're non-Muslim.
Oh.
I don't know if you've heard of it. They're
No.
non-Muslim white people, young women who've just decided to just dedicate their time into taking care of their house, their husband, their kids, looking fancy at home, all of that. And they're like, no, I don't want to be independent and I don't want to be focused on my career. I want to be taken care of. And I'm like, subhanallah, if like a Muslim woman said that, she would be shamed as backward, submissive, have no ambition.
Yeah.
And non-Muslims are finding this new approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that approach, I think it's not to say, because we were discussing that maybe that's something that could help people get married earlier, but you're mentioning as well that it's mutual. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Like
Exactly.
people can be married and studying at the same time.
Yeah,
I think that's something not many people are opening up to.
Exactly. I think the problem is that we are treating marriage as some sort of business exchange, or like it's a checklist. Like, I need to have XYZ done before I can consider marriage. Where in reality, the way our religion treats marriage is a means of growth, spiritual growth, union, support. And when we're just treating it like, okay, I need to travel to 10 countries, I need to have a 6-figure income, I need to have this, and this. Well, that's you're not approaching marriage with the right mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like something an award you have after you've achieved everything else. And it's
exactly.
not. Just recently we were talking to a very, very lovely girl, mashallah. Yeah. She's still not married, of course. And she said the problem is finding men who are accomplished within the age range she wants. But the thing is,
and she's an accomplished girl herself.
She's very accomplished girl.
Yeah.
The problem is if you want to marry somebody who's already accomplished and all of that, then that guy is probably interested in somebody younger, right? Because you're accomplished as well. Yeah. But what's the problem with marrying somebody who's not accomplished yet? Maybe he doesn't own a house yet. You can rent together, you can grow together and achieve things together.
And not just that, to add to that, there's nothing wrong with a girl financially supporting a guy while he's still in school, while he's still trying to get up on his feet, or helping out, right? But we've shamed that now. When there are examples in our seerah of situations like that, where the wife was the breadwinner in some cases, but we forget that our values come from our deen and not from our society, not from Western norms,
culture, or even our cultures. Yeah,
even our culture. Yeah,
exactly. That's just reminding me of Musa alayhi salam, how his marriage was super, like, it was related to him doing like a financial
Subhanallah.
deal at the exact same time. Like, it all came in a package. And
Yeah.
his dua was, you know, Ya Allah, give me what's best for me.
Mhm.
And subhanAllah, like that answer, those things came together. It wasn't like, okay, well, first check off getting a job, then
Yeah.
do this,
Find a
and stuff,
house.
then
Yeah.
find a house.
The father-in-law
And
gave him
then-
a job. He took
house,
care of
yeah,
him. A
family
house.
commitment,
Like,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it was great.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just being open to that concept, that's one of the ways we can maybe overcome these barriers of people thinking that, no, this needs to happen first before I get married. I was telling you off air too, like, I actually had a very long journey, like,
Yeah.
in finding someone as well. And I feel like there's just like, there's so many layers to it, but also like there is, I think, to a certain extent, like personal growth that you need to go through in order to get there. So I'm just curious how you guys feel, like, how can someone maybe know when they're ready? Because I know that was an issue I had where I was like very young. I was like 16 where I'm like, oh, I'm ready. But there was a certain point where I was like, wait, no, I'm not ready. And I know that's something a lot of girls my age are going through right now.
Mhm.
Like, I'll just have a conversation with one of my friends and they're like, you know what? I'm not ready. And that happens for 6 months. Then 6 months later, I'm ready now. And then again, no. So that back and forth is very common for people now because they're
Yeah.
like, I feel like there's like so many expectations of what ready means in marriage. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think people are treating it like a switch that, and sometimes what's really hidden beneath that statement, I'm not ready, is other things taking priority. I need to finish my degree, and that's the truth. They won't say it, but that's the truth, right? That I need to finish my degree, or I need to do XYZ. And so when you talk about getting ready, it's not much, I would say, different than going to the gym. You just got to put in the work, right? So there are steps to take. Number one step that we
Maturity.
always share in our workshop is talking to your parents, having that open communication, because your parents know you best, right? Say, hey, I'm thinking about marriage. What do you think? Are they, maybe they'll have some feedback for you saying, I don't think you're ready yet because, hey, you don't even make your bed at the end of the day. And now you're talking about marriage. How are you going to take responsibility for someone else if you're not taking responsibility for yourself?
Yeah.
So having that open communication with your parents first, assessing your values,
Your maturity.
your
as well.
maturity,
Yeah.
what are your priorities, what are your future goals, what are your expectations of marriage? Are you looking to take a more traditional role in your marriage? Are you looking to maybe take a more kind of modern role? Like, what, all of these things need to be thought about in order for you to get married.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, hey, finish my degree, okay, now it's time to start thinking about marriage. It doesn't necessarily work like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, maturity is a key role, plays a key role here.
Yeah.
And for example, if you're a guy and you're thinking about marriage, but at the same time your mom's still waking you up to go to work, she's still making your, I don't know, lunch to take with you, your dad's still paying for your phone bills, and there are some signs that you're not ready, you're not mature enough, right?
So maturity involves taking responsibility for yourself, for your health, your finances, everything. And those are huge signs for readiness for marriage.
So I feel like that's it's interesting because we were discussing that, well, it's okay to prioritize marriage even if you don't have everything checked off. But then what I'm hearing is that there is that concept of being mature enough to have certain things done. What would those certain things done?
Self-assessment for sure.
Self-assessment is important.
Self-assessment, knowing your values. We talk a lot, like we run some workshops, premarital workshops, and we focus a lot about self-assessment, recognizing your values. What are your triggers? What are your aspirations? What can you tolerate? What can't you tolerate, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not marrying yourself. You're not marrying...
You're not marrying perfection.
You're not marrying perfection. The default is flaws, right? And it's important to know these things. What are the habits you can live with, habits you can't live with? So when we say start preparing for marriage, this doesn't necessarily mean start looking, but start figuring out your values, start figuring out what you want in a spouse, because these things take time. It's not just a matter of going to a dark room, closing your eyes and just reflecting. These things take time. And it starts from here.
And it also starts with the very vulnerable conversations with your parents, with other loved ones, people who know you best, that can give you some solid feedback. When we were first talking, I remember I was very clear on Dealbreakers. Dealbreakers is something that we talk a lot about in our workshop. Another term we use is non-negotiables. And so when I was talking to Hiba, I said my number one deal breaker is that I need somebody who is appreciative and supportive of the arts. That was like my number one non-negotiable, because and the reason for that was because it was rooted in something that I valued. Art was something I dedicated a lot of my years studying. I was into performance arts, so specifically live theater. So I did it for a number of years. I went to
That's so
school
cool.
for it. Yeah, I went to school for it for 2 years, and it was something I was looking to pursue further on in my life. So it was a big part of who I was at the time.
Yeah.
So if I heard anything remotely like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that, oh, I think it's haram, and the list goes on, I would know immediately that this person is not fit for me. They might be good for somebody else, but then that person is not good for me. So when you are clear on your deal breakers and, like Hiba said, your values, you are going to save so much time.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to really cut down and filter out people that just aren't compatible with you. And so when we talk about doing that self-assessment, it's also about saving time. And that plays a big part.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking like I'm understanding now. It's like just saying that, okay, I'm ready for marriage. It's not actually, it's that starting point where someone's getting confused. Oh, I don't know if I'm ready. It starts with that self-assessment.
Yeah.
There's no other place to go.
Just having the mindset that I'm thinking about marriage. Like the marriage is like, I'm thinking about it. I'm not pushing it away. I'm thinking about it. So this means I'm putting the word out. People maybe know that I'm looking. Like we said, assessing my maturity, assessing my readiness, all of that. And also the process of finding a spouse takes a long time. Takes a long time. So you want to start your search early, and you're going to grow. By the time you find that person, you're going to change and grow even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that we're saying that even finding a spouse is part of the journey, because I don't think people think that. Yes. And I didn't think that when I started it. But now I look back, I'm like, that was a journey.
SubhanAllah, you learned probably a lot about yourself during that journey.
Yeah, and it was so meant to be, and I would never change it for anything, because that's exactly what I needed to go through.
Beautiful.
But like, I think if we change that mindset of marriage being, this is it, marriage is the wedding, it's the ring, and it's the materials, like if we can just let go of that concept, then it's the journey to even finding yourself. And even after you're married, you're still finding yourself too.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it is a journey, and it's not much different. I use this analogy all the time, that it's not much different from applying to medical school or dental school.
Yeah.
Chances are you're not going to get into the first school you apply. You're going to get rejected. You're going to apply to second school, or third school, or fourth school.
Yeah.
And you're going to keep pushing. You're going to keep pushing, because that is your goal, right? That's what you want to be. So marriage isn't exactly the same way. And we get so caught up with movies and stories of people marrying their high school sweetheart, their college sweetheart, and they think they can take a passive approach and it'll be easy. But for the vast majority of people, it's work. It takes time and involves a lot of rejections and a lot of heartbreak.
It'll make you more resilient, stronger, know even what you want, more clearer, and just refine your search.
So
I would say
being patient with the process. Yeah, it's important.
I really like the word passive, because I think that what you're doing at Halal Match is saying, well, no, be active about the search, because a lot of people are passive, and I feel like it maybe works for some people. I feel like it's just a way that they connect to the process, but there's others out there who are like, I need a system to help me do this, right? How would you kind of maybe speak to someone who says, well, no, marriage is such a, like, it's gonna come from God, and it's so like, because I'm sort of like that, and I'm still like, that's my mindset in a lot of things. I'm very more of like a passive person. So I'm curious to know what would be something that would attract me to using a resource like Halal Match, if I'm more of like on that end. Do you guys
I actually can relate to this, because I come from a background, I'm Arab. So in my culture, the girl doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
And I say it even on our promo video, that I grew up in a culture where marriage, what do I say? Where if you're a woman, you wait for marriage to come to you.
Yes.
Unfortunately. And it's like we have a concept of aib, which is like
socially
unacceptable, awkward, frowned upon for a girl to say, I want to get married. I'm interested in marriage, right? You wait, you dress up, you go to weddings, you hope you're going to be noticed, and that's it. Like qadar, it'll come to you. But
Yeah.
Islamically, that's not like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. When they had a daughter was at the age of marriage, they would just propose on her behalf to other Sahabas, right? And I have a daughter. Are you interested? I have a daughter. Are you interested? But our culture, unfortunately, makes it difficult for girls, especially. So I would say to any girl, don't let culture dictate the way you should live, especially when it goes against our deen. There is nothing wrong. Be proactive, and guys and girls at the same time, be
But
proactive.
more so for girls, please be
Yeah.
proactive, put in the work.
Previous generations, it worked for them because especially people like living in Muslim countries, the community knows each other. It happens organically.
Exactly.
But here we are less than 5% in Canada as Muslims, and the community is not going to take care of you. You got to put in the effort.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah,
said. That's
even
a very important
Islamically,
point.
we have a concept of tying your camel as well as putting your trust in Allah, and those two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So you can't do one without the other.
Yeah, so whether it doesn't necessarily like have to work with us, but any steps you can take, put the word out with your I don't know, extended family, your friends, that I'm interested in marriage. If you know someone, please recommend me or recommend them to me.
Exactly.
Whether it's matchmaking events, whether it's matrimonial services, but look for privacy, of course. Whether it's most importantly getting involved in the community, your local masjid, conventions, whatever initiatives out there. Go out of your room. Don't keep to your room and say Allah will know, Allah will just bring marriage to me, He will send me my charming prince. No, go out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that Halal Match, you don't think of it as a dating site. What's your take on dating sites? Because you mentioned conventions, you mentioned everything else, but you didn't say dating sites. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
So
Halal dating sites. Halal dating sites.
Actually,
so
next
we were just talking about that, I think a few weeks back,
Yeah.
because we saw an app on Instagram, and it was an app. I'm not going to say the name of the app, but under it said Halal Dating, and it was an app for Muslims to find their
I know
spouse.
what you're talking about. I'm not gonna say any names.
sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't
It
it?
is a major oxymoron.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you're a service that's modeling things like Tinder or speed dating, you have to reevaluate what are your intentions. Are you really just trying to make money? Are you just trying to create a hookup service, or are you genuinely trying to provide something that's Islamic, something that's going to help Muslims build fruitful marriages? So it's we're not for any sort of service that says halal dating, because it's a total oxymoron.
Yeah.
For marriage, there has to be some degree of privacy, as Hiba was saying. There has to be some time in which you can get to know the person in depth,
Assess seriousness,
assess compatibility,
as well.
seriousness.
Yeah.
So there are some services like that, but unfortunately, there's a lot of matrimonial sites where you just have a public registry.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't know if the person is a bot or a human or what's going on.
Some people even on these apps, unfortunately, are already married, by the way.
Yeah.
And so even though we say it's a double date, we take people on double date, but it's just the use of the word. It's not actually a date. It's people who already know information about the other person, about how compatible they are, and we accompany them as well.
And the same goes for matrimonial events too. Unfortunately, a lot of Islamic conventions are copying speed dating events or speed dating formats. You just sit across someone for 5 to 7 minutes, you say hi, hello, and within that time you're supposed to assess whether or not there's somebody compatible for you for the purpose of marriage, and then you move on to the next person, and after 3 hours you don't remember the last person you spoke to. And it's just copying what non-Muslims are doing. And we haven't really invested the time to think, is this what works for us Muslims or does it not?
I think Zaid mentioned in one event, he found himself sitting across a woman who was 20 years older than him. And it's the most awkward
and it
few
happened
minutes.
at one of the Islamic conventions here in Ontario.
I feel like that's like this is a new, because it's such a new term, people were open to accepting halal dating apps. And I know there's so many like people who are just like, I know a lot of people personally who are like, I'm gonna try out the apps, but it's just doesn't work out. It's
Yeah.
Sometimes
really,
it works.
there are-
Sometimes.
So
I've never
for a
seen personally,
minority
but
of
yeah.
people, it does work. I
Yeah.
think what people are really looking for deep down is a service that fuses their Western norms and culture with Islamic values, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, Islam isn't against culture, right? But there is a way that we can fuse the two together. So, alhamdulillah, I feel like we found that balance in our service where we have a double date approach. So the clients are never alone. We're with them. At the same time, we're facilitating introductions. So it's not like the parents are sitting there hovering over them.
Yeah.
So what people are looking for is a balanced approach. And given there's such a shortage of good services out there, people are resorting to non-Islamic services
Exactly.
or un-Islamic services like dating apps and things like that.
Yeah, another service we could recommend, which is great. We met on it as well. It's called HalfDex. I'm sure many people
Most people know
it.
HalfDex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of the best services out there. We even recommend it to our own clients.
Yeah.
So
What's HalfDex about? Like, what makes it different?
HalfDex, so it's unique because number one, it's not a public registry. You have to create an account. There's a monthly subscription fee, and you can't, even when you do create an account, you don't just immediately start shopping around for somebody that's that could be your spouse. You have to create you have to do a personality assessment. So there's a list of, I think, hundreds of questions you
tons
have to
of
go through.
questions you have
Tons
to
of
go
questions.
through. So anyone who's not serious, they're not gonna spend the time go through all of
Exactly.
that.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're a guy, you can only see profiles of girls. If you're a girl, you can only see profiles of
Yeah.
guys. So it's very specific, is specifically designed for Muslims trying to get married.
Yeah, and what's special about it is the person who's behind it, Baba Ali. We know him personally, and he's so passionate and dedicated to the topic of marriage
Yes.
and just trying to help the Muslim community.
Yeah.
Great service. Check it
Yeah,
out,
He's
guys.
had thousands of success
Yeah,
stories.
mashallah. Yeah.
How do parents feel about Halal Match? Like, what's their response?
That's a good
That's
question.
something I could talk a lot about. Parents, we've had parents that have been very critical of our service because they get the impression that we're trying to exclude them.
That's right.
And I feel like that's kind of
That's
what
a
we're
great
trying to
question,
go
by the
with,
way.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because I was watching your podcast with Mad Mumlooks. I think
Oh,
that's what
you
it's
saw it.
called. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, Brother Kashif, he sent it to me. And I was
Yeah.
watching and I was thinking, I was like, oh, it's so cool. How do parents think about this? I'm going to ask them tomorrow.
Some parents have not been very fond of our service,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Because the thing is that what we're trying to instill in our clients as well as parents is that number one, it's just a two-person team. We don't have the resources to go about interviewing parents, mom, dad, maybe siblings, maybe another uncle or somebody, and try to get their perspective as to what they want for their son or daughter.
Everybody wants something, right?
Everybody wants something. That's number one. We just don't have the manpower for that. And number two, the expectations sometimes of parents are oftentimes going to be different than what their son or daughter wants.
Yeah.
And so it's incumbent upon our clients to have that conversation with their parents. If you are looking to get married, you have to mature up, have that conversation with your parents, open those channels of communication. We're not going to do that for you.
And then
Yes.
hire a
You know,
service.
You got to
You
behave
do
like
that.
an adult.
You do
right?
that. You have the conversation, the communication with your parents.
Just like with the analogy I used before, mom and dad aren't going to that medical school interview for you. You
Exactly.
got to do it for you. You got to put in the legwork, dedicate X number of years to make sure. Your parents may guide you, may help you, may support you in everything, and that's great. But at the end of the day, you got to put in the legwork. So it's not much different when it comes to marriage.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah, but we had some instances actually where we're interviewing a new client, and then happened more than once, and the girl
Yeah.
is just looking away to the side. We ask question, and she keeps looking at, and then turns out her mom is feeding her the answers. So
Yeah.
we ask, "What are you looking for?" Mom is saying what she's looking for. Okay, what are your deal breakers? Mom is answering,
Exactly.
right?
So she hasn't taken the time to assess what she wants.
mm,
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
of course we didn't take on the client because she just wasn't the right fit for us. But that's just another example of people not doing that
Mhm.
self-assessment.
But we always encourage our clients, consult with your parents. When we introduce somebody to them, before you tell us yes or no, consult with your parents.
Exactly.
Pray istikhara, because they have a good feedback as well.
Exactly.
But don't
Yeah.
rely. That's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even on our intake form, we have a checkbox for the girls who come on board saying, my wali is aware that I'm using Halal Match as a service.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's very important.
Of
Exactly.
course.
Okay, that was great. I was so curious about that. I was waiting to ask this question because I think like for me especially like just I'm Pakistani, so it's very like family is the route to take, and of course there's so many different ways that I was looking as well. But at the end of the day, it's like I understand where for like just in terms of my own experience where I was like, yes, like at some point I need to accept that my parents will need to have a certain level of involvement, and that just they need to be part of that. So
Of course.
I love that with Halal Match. You're so like open about that idea because it's true. There's a lot of families who are like, no, this is our process. But then there's some families who are like, no, go ahead and do it. And that's where you consult with your parents and you see, well, are they okay with that? then?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of
yeah.
times with girls and boys, it's very different, as you said, with the wali, because for the girl, she needs to speak to her father that, okay, this
course.
is something I'm doing.
Of course. Yeah.
So
Of
yeah,
course,
it's a
of
very
course.
different process.
Yeah.
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 Um,
It's important because the thing that sometimes gets overlooked is that, even though girls do need a wali in the process, there
Mhm.
is a degree of responsibility and work that she can still do on her own.
exactly.
So, for example, and I always bring up this story, when Hiba and I were talking, Hiba was on HalfDex at the time, but her parents were aware that she was using the service. So when she saw my profile, and she reached out to me first, by the way, when she saw my profile, she was like, "Hey, I saw your profile. I think there's something in common here. Would you mind if we exchange contact information?" So I read her profile and we started talking. And we talked for, I think, a few weeks. And it was at that point she said, we are compatible. We should explore the idea of doing our nikah. And then at that point, she talked to her parents and said, "Hey, I think that I have a guy who's really compatible with me. This is why I really like him. I want you to talk to him." Right? In many cases, I hear, and sometimes scholars say this too, if a guy approaches a girl, tell him to go talk to your wali. Well, there is an in between with that, right? Talk to your wali, but at the same time, pave the path for that guy.
So you talk to your
You
wali
talk to your
before
wali.
you let the guy speak to your wali.
Exactly.
Right.
Talk to your wali first. Pave the path for him. Make it easier for him rather than the guy coming over to the house and parents just imposing their general expectations on the guy and not understanding what the needs of their daughter are.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is a balanced approach, and
Yeah.
it doesn't always just have to be, hey, go talk to my wali, or hey, my parents are involved. Even on matrimonial websites, I've seen many times girls with a profile, but in the account it says my dad is checking this inbox, my mom is checking this
Mm,
inbox,
Yeah.
or I'm making this profile on behalf of my daughter.
Yeah.
So it's a huge red flag because it's just showing that that the
Lack of
girl's not ready,
maturity,
lack
yeah.
of maturity, and that the
Yeah.
girl's not ready.
Yeah. And I bet the same can happen for guys too. whose
Actually,
parents-
I saw it
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the account says, so apparently his mom or sister made this account.
Yeah.
My son is a doctor. He's very busy. If you want to know about him, contact me. So I'm like, wow, if he's too busy to look, how is he going to have time for marriage?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an appreciation of like the fact that marriage is also a very like personal choice, and you need to be proactive in
Yeah.
that choice and not just, okay, well, yeah, you guys decide because this is who you're spending the rest of your life with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very beautiful. So,
100%.
Yeah.
yeah, I really like and really appreciate how Halal Match does that fusion, because I think that's hard to see. So what you're explaining there, like I think bringing that back together is, yes, there is that aspects of culture, and there will be some cultures where, okay, family wants that involvement from the get-go, and if they do, then have that communication with them, and then here's a service for people who are not getting that biodata sharing to the community, that kind of vibe, which is that's how I got married. But it's like there's, and even if they are, if it's not working out, this is a resource. But I also see it in a new form as well. It can also be the first step for parents too to be involved in Halal Match,
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes actually we have some discovery calls and the parent is on the call. Like the girl would say, is it
Yeah.
possible for my
And we're
dad
totally
to join
okay
the
with
call?
that.
And
Yeah.
we are totally okay with that. He's part of the call, but you're not relying completely on him, right? You're
Right.
clear about your values, what you want in a spouse, but he just brings you that extra comfort. That's totally fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. But after that step, then we let the clients know that after this, then it's just you that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with your parents. And if we do come, if this does lead to a double date, then it's just going to be you, the match, and us.
Mm.
So we're very clear and strict about that.
Yeah. If you want to hear something funny
Yeah.
about our story, so my parents don't speak any English. His parents don't speak any Arabic, and I was caught in the middle translating.
Yeah.
And introducing him to my family
Yeah.
and all of that.
Oh
and
my
Yeah.
God.
I was able to translate whatever I wanted.
Oh
No, I'm just joking. But alhamdulillah, like when there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
were oceans apart, languages apart, and alhamdulillah, like we were able to make it work.
Yeah.
And what we see
Yeah.
sometimes is people start with why it shouldn't work.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
could
that
talk about
hinders hinders many marriages from happening. Instead, focus on why it can work, and if there's things that might make it difficult and there's a way around it, like the wedding date or timeline, or I don't know, the number of kids you want to have in the future, whatever,
Roles and responsibilities.
yeah,
There's flexibility in many
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
but many times things just don't move forward because of technical things, I would say.
Yeah, we have a whole episode dedicated to that on our podcast, which
Yes.
is called "Why Is the Default No?"
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And we see it over and over again. Like before people have even given it much thought, they'll say no.
Yeah.
And it's over things that can work, geographical location, other things that Hiba was mentioning. But we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing. We're a very small minority here in Canada.
Yeah.
And so the pool of people that are available is already small.
So we have like a slide in our workshop where we share this big circle of like Muslims in Canada, and then smaller. The circle keeps getting smaller once you add ethnicity, height, profession, what else? I don't know.
Geographic
location, and then you end up in this like small circle where there's only like you and 3 other people, and then we're saying, why is it hard to get married?
Right?
Because
Because
we're
people are
putting
making
these
it harder.
restrictions on ourselves.
Yeah. And restrictions that don't, maybe we will agree, that don't necessarily like have an impact on the future of your marriage. Like, of course,
Exactly.
major differences are okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's like if someone is just really bringing it down to, okay, no, like if you live 2 hours away from me, no way, right? Like that's
Right.
unless it's like a moving issue. But there's so many different layers. So I'm hearing be more open-minded, and
Exactly.
I genuinely think like it seems that the pool is huge of people to choose from, and
Mhm.
that's why everyone gets so picky, because they're like, oh, there's so many profiles out there. I see
Yeah, like
thousands
GTA
every day.
has
Yeah.
so many daisies, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, out
exactly.
of all of these Muslims in Canada, like a big percentage of them is the other gender than what you're looking for. Then amongst those, there are people who are either too young or too old. Then amongst the people in the right age, there are who are already married, right? Who are not interested in marriage,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
have specific circumstances. So the pool is very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say this all the time in the workshop, that if someone was to ask me who I would marry 10, 15 years ago, I would have probably said a Pakistani or Indian girl that cooks desi food, maybe speaks Urdu. But when I started talking to Hiba, those negative thoughts actually did flood my mind. I thought, okay, I don't speak Arabic as my first language. She's all the way in Jordan. I'm in Canada. I can't communicate with her parents. Her parents don't speak English. How is this going to work? But we saw common interests and our values aligned so well that everything else just figured itself out.
SubhanAllah.
And that was the
Yeah.
important thing, that being open-minded, knowing what your values are, and allowing the other things to just kind of just fall into place,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah, I think that's really important, is like the open-mindedness. And it's subhanAllah, like you're saying, look at how many differences you both had, but then the common interests and values that aligned you. Whereas people are working backwards. They're saying exactly what you said, like, nope, I'm looking for this age, this specific height,
Ethnicity.
this specific ethnicity. Then
Mhm.
from that pool, they're saying, well, we're not having common interests. Well, because your pool is so small, as you said.
Exactly.
So that's
yeah.
so interesting. This is the first time I'm actually sitting down and reflecting that this actually has an impact, why it's so hard to find a spouse. It might just be your like biases and the way that you're thinking about marriage that's putting you through this.
Yeah.
That plays a big role, and it
Yeah.
starts from
does.
the values and not from the specifics, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Inshallah, we'll move over to questions from our audience.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Brother Kashif?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So before we get to the questions, I just want to share the website is halalmatch.ca. That's where you can find more information and also contact them. There's also the Instagram handle, which is halalmatch.ca. So a lot of great the podcasts that they were mentioning. You can also find the links to it on there. But so before I take this off the screen, anything you want to add about halalmatch.ca or?
What do we want to share?
So we do a variety of different things from our podcast. So you can check out our podcast.
It's called Diary of a Matchmaker.
Diary of a Matchmaker. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else. Those are the two main places you can find it. If you are somebody that's already in talks with someone, whether you're engaged or you just started the courting phase, we do have a resource for you called our Compatibility Challenge. In that game, or in that ebook, is a series of 7 games. And through those games, you can learn a lot about your potential spouse. They're really fun. There's a lot of important questions weaved into those games. Those games we specifically use for our clients at our double dates, and we've gotten wonderful feedback from our clients. So definitely check that out on our website. Anything else?
Yeah, would love to work with you if you are single, serious, mature Muslim.
Yeah. So we do a free discovery call. You could just go on the website and fill out a form, and the first step is completely free, where you just get to know us and we get to know you and make sure we're a good fit for each other.
Yeah, that's it.
Jazakallah khair. And then some of the questions we had here, we had some submitted from Instagram ahead of time. So it's saying, so the question was asking, what advice do you have for someone talking to more than one person?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay. So without sounding judgmental, you shouldn't talk to more than one person, because it's just gonna cloud your judgment and make it harder to choose from. But if this is the way you roll, this is what you like to do, then what one advice would be is be clear about your deal breakers and ask all those persons one good question that would let you know if they have any of your deal breakers. And then it's easier to just eliminate, I would say.
Right.
But the wiser choice would be is just giving your entire energy and focus and time to one person at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Take a step back, make sure you're clear on your values and deal breakers, and you will filter out most people immediately. Like the same way I talked about my deal breaker being someone appreciative of the arts, or that was my non-negotiable. I was able to filter out so many people, and when I did find somebody, it just opened up doors for me.
Jazakallah khair. So the next question that had come in is, what's the one thing a guy could do to improve his chances? So I guess they're asking, based on your experience, like what are girls looking for? What are some things if a guy did maybe improve, and vice versa too? Probably it's a guy that asked a question, but what are something that maybe girls could do also that sort of, maybe some of the things you're seeing that aren't working well that people need to be conscious of about themselves?
So for the guys, I would say girls are looking for somebody that has leadership qualities, maturity, leadership qualities, all of those things. And so if you're a guy that, and there's nothing wrong with your parents still financially supporting you, but if you're not taking steps to take ownership of your health, of your finances, then that's a problem. Girls are looking for these things, somebody who has financial stability, or at least making steps towards financial stability. What else can we add to that?
For guys, be a good listener
A
as
good
well.
listener is important.
Know how women think, know that they think differently. And remember, you're talking to a woman, you're not talking to your guy friend. So learn to be an active listener, not just a passive listener, and show a genuine interest in her. For girls, I would say don't compete with him. Don't compete. Guys are built to lead, subhanallah, and it's something that Allah recognized in us humans and gave them qiwama, which is not control and as some people understand it, but the ability to lead. So don't compete with him. Your achievements and education and all of that, that's for you. But when it comes to the house and all of that, let him lead.
Yeah. And also, if you're a guy on a matrimonial website, make sure that you invest the time in reading the girl's profile before you message her. If you're just saying, hi, hello, I saw your profile, and you're sending the same message to 20 girls, it's not going to help you. Take the time to read the profile, see what stands out in her profile, and use that in the conversation. Say, I love this thing about you and your profile. I saw you love art. I saw you have an appreciation or a love for the deen, something that stands out, and it goes a long way.
Jazakallah khair. So the next question that had come in was, what's the key expectations, requirements a guy could change to broaden his chances? You know, one thing I heard you guys talk about somewhere, I forget exactly where, was this concept of perfection, reasonable, and realistic, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you could also, maybe it's not related to this question, but if you could also touch upon that, because that sort of resonated with me also.
Sure.
And I shared it with a lot of people that were looking to get married.
Right. So in our workshop, we treat the search for a spouse as 3 stages. The first stage is ideal, right? We're in our 20s, sometimes even as teenagers, and we have this idealistic version of who we want to marry. With guys, it's a girl that looks a certain way, that dresses a certain way, who probably cooks your favorite food, etc., etc. And what's the other one?
For guys,
For
for girls, they should have a 6-pack, drive whatever fancy car,
$1 million, things like that. And then we grow up, and then we face a few rejections, and then time goes on, and then we go to the next stage, which is reasonable. Reasonable is something that I would see all the time when I was looking for a spouse, which is, I've dedicated X amount of years achieving my degree. I'm making so much money. I deserve somebody who is at the same level as me. And the problem with that is that your ego is dictating the process and not your values.
Interesting. I thought that would be okay. I was like, yeah, making sense.
Because then the problem is that you're treating marriage as some sort of status game. Oh, I'm a doctor, I deserve somebody who's a doctor. I'm a lawyer, I deserve somebody who's also a lawyer, or somebody who's at the same level as me.
Earns this much.
Right?
Yeah.
Hiba has a master's degree, I don't. It was never an issue for us, right? It wasn't, because there was no status game, there was no competition going on between us. So remember that the goal of marriage is support, union, and growth. It's not a status game or anything like
Your
that.
achievements are for you, not to be used as a tool and leverage.
Right. And the final stage is realistic. Understanding that we are a minority in this country, finding somebody that's right for you is already hard. And the more conditions we're putting on that, the harder we're making it upon ourselves. So start with your values, not with your ego, not with your education or career. Start with your values, those important things, your non-negotiables that we talked about, and allow that to be your guiding compass.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, personality is what stays and character is what stays. Like, after a while, you'll get used to her beauty. She'll get old, right? After a while, you never know. He's gonna retire. Maybe he will lose his money, God forbid, whatever. But the character itself, it's what stays. And you're looking to marry somebody and inshallah spend the next 40, 50, whatever Allah has written for you with this person. So marry somebody for their deen and their character, like the Prophet ﷺ said, deen and khuluq, right? And not for the other stuff.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. So we had some more questions coming in live. So one was saying, regardless the service, the person needs to put themselves out there. How do you recommend people get comfortable with this? So, if you're introverted or something, you're not comfortable, like, have you seen this, and what do you recommend to people?
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah. So realize that getting married is a journey. It's loaded with rejections. And if you want to get married, you have to deal with the rejections. It comes with a level of resilience. And as Hiba mentioned before, you can't just stay in your room and just pray and think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It requires work. You have to be proactive.
For somebody who's introverted, I would say use some services who would help you. Like, for example, we have a friend. He runs a service. It's called Kalam HQ. And he specifically works with introverted Muslim professionals and helps them to get out there and express themselves and control like their speech and all of that. So use some services out there, but put yourself out there as well.
Yeah, also to add, like, we have little to no excuse nowadays. Like 20, 30 years ago, there weren't that many apps, matrimonial websites, things like that. And now we have an abundance of resources and options. So there's no excuse to have where we can say, oh, it's getting hard to get married. Put yourself on platforms, seek out matchmakers, put the word in with family and friends. There are so many avenues available to us now, but it just requires people being proactive.
Jazakallah khair. So, on the topic of marriage, we have a question coming in.
Mhm.
Ask the host why she took my car.
Oh, that's my husband.
What's up? Why'd you take his car?
Oh my god, I'm not answering that. I thought he's gonna be sleeping till now.
That's a good one.
So we have a question coming. Oh, sorry. Another one that came in live. Where was it? Oh, here we go. Youth have seen, so I think it's a typo. I think it says horror stories when it comes to marriages and seen so many bad marriages around them. How do we convince youth not to be scared of that?
Wow.
Well, speaking from experience, talking to many Muslims who unfortunately got divorced, the number one reason we're seeing for divorce is incompatibility,
Yes.
and not abuse or neglect or infidelity. Some of these cases do happen, but it's like few bad apples that ruin it for everyone. It's not as common as we think it is, abuse and all of that.
Yeah.
And if you try to focus on finding the right person who's compatible with you, their values and all of that, then there is no reason why divorce would happen, right? But unfortunately, we're going to marriage with the wrong
With the
I would
wrong
say
mindset.
a wrong mindset,
Yeah.
prioritizing the wrong things, and then marriage breaks. Sometimes after a few days of marriage. Sometimes we have clients who got divorced after a few months, unfortunately.
All because of incompatibility. They weren't asking the right questions. They weren't assessing values.
There's legwork that needs to be done.
Yeah.
The engagement period, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged people to get engaged before tying the knot. Why? Because he recognized people need to know each other, have that ulfa between them, that comfortability between them. But in today's age, we're spending that time on planning for the wedding, the cake, the honeymoon, all of that, instead of getting to know each other. But for the youth, don't be scared by divorce. Do your work, and inshallah, you'll have prosperous marriage.
Yeah. Just don't let a few bad marriages ruin it for yourself.
Jazakallah khair. So we had Dr. Rashid also watching, and he was putting some comments and advices in as we were going along. So one comment he put in while we were talking about get involved in the community. He put in, we sought knowledge of what our future son-in-law had done for those he lived with, his family, his community. So I think that's just be involved in the community, because when people will ask for references and what have you done, so the more people there are to sort of vouch for you and speak up to your character. So it's a very important reason why to get involved in the community. So we thank Dr. Rashid for reminding us.
100%.
Yeah.
And another question was, what are your thoughts on personality assessment, marriage workshops, passing a basic multiple choice on these? Their concept, how does the person foresee personal development? So I think we talked a lot about this, about the assessments and stuff, but I think maybe what he's getting at here is what are your thoughts on, before someone's ready for marriage, they really need to know themselves, right? Or
yeah. Education is very important. Get ready before jumping in blind. Today, alhamdulillah, there's so many premarital courses, programs, workshops, all of that services out there, and we gotta utilize all these resources, and it will help and minimize the number of divorces. Actually, they've tested it on, I think, in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. They had a very high percentage of divorce, and then they had this condition that before you're able to get your nikah, you need to pass this course, premarital course.
Oh,
If I'm not mistaken, either Malaysia or Indonesia, one of them, I think
Yeah.
Malaysia, and the number of divorces dropped drastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are some scholars in the States too that won't even conduct a nikah without
Yes.
without premarital training.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, we're big
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of personality assessments, so we haven't really dived into those specific personality questionnaires, but when we talk about assessment, it's like what we said before, just taking the time to talk to people, asking yourself the right questions on about values, deal breakers, and things like that, and those will go a long way. Once you have those tools in your tool bag, it will help you
Yeah.
along your journey.
And that's why we
Yeah.
developed the compatibility challenge. You
Yeah.
learn a lot about yourself as well as the other person.
Yeah, I think it's what you guys were mentioning about how first step to marriage is self-assessing. And if you're not able to get through that, something like a personality test and assessment and something like premarital training is going to show you that. And then you'll know, oh, I'm not ready yet. But if you're just putting yourself out there without that training, then you wouldn't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. I'll also take this moment to plug something that Happy Strong Family has done, where we've put together actually an online pre-marriage course also. So this is with Sister Hina Mirza, who's a licensed therapist and has counseled alhamdulillah like hundreds upon hundreds of couples.
Mashallah.
So we've packaged her pre-marriage counseling that she does into a very engaging online workshop with different modules for about 2 hours. And we usually don't charge for services. This one we charge to help fund the studio and some of the things that we're doing. So inshallah, check it out, support us, and accept it as sadaqah, and may inshallah it help people too, because it's it's a lot of knowledge in there from her experience of 20 years of counseling couples. So you can also check that out, inshallah.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
So then there was another question coming in. So this is something Dr. Rashid presented it, and this is something he talks a lot about, is that he actually wants to do courses and lectures and seminars for the parents of the couple, right? So parents can learn how to be mother-in-laws and father-in-laws, because it's not the same as being a mother and a father, right? And a lot of times it's the parents that are actually impacting their children's marriages in a negative way instead of in a supportive manner. So I guess he's asking, what are your sort of thoughts on parent education before their youngsters get married? Maturity and expectations are reasons for serious misunderstandings. So what advice would you have just generally for parents of the people that are looking to get married based on your experience?
So we don't have a lot of experience working with the parents themselves. But I guess a general advice I would give is be a source of support and not a source of judgment. Support in any way they can. If your son is young and interested in marriage and you see he's mature enough, there's no problem in you supporting him financially even until he's able to get his own place and stand on his own feet, right? Same thing for the girl. What advice, Zaid, would you give?
For girls, I would say please start the conversations early. It is very hard, and we're specifically speaking as professional matchmakers, it's very hard for a girl to get married past the age of 30. It's one of the most challenging parts of our work. So start the conversations early, be a means of support, as Hiba said, and if she does find somebody that she is interested, or if a guy is showing interest, then be a means of support for the guy too. There's nothing wrong, like Musa alayhi salam's story, right, where the father-in-law supported him. So if that's the case, and if the guy is a great match for your daughter, then be that means of support.
You could even maybe support him financially. We know some scholars who their in-laws supported them because they recognize that this is a good person. He's gonna take care of my daughter and respect her. And like Zaid said, don't treat the prospect as a murder suspect.
That happens
assume
a lot.
the best in people.
Assume the best. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. So we're approaching the top of the hour. Maybe I'll just ask one question before I hand it back to Munta. Is we're so we talk about a lot about relationships and marriages on this show, and one of the discussions that has come up previously is this concept of people being afraid or not willing to marry people from a different culture than them, a different background of them. Is this because, honestly, I'm Pakistani in my family. I still see it a lot with my aunts and uncles. Maybe some of this is legitimate, but I think some of it, I'll call it, some of it is just pure down racism, right? So is this still an issue? And you guys obviously being a couple from a different background, like any thoughts around this, and what advice would you give for people that might be hesitant for this reason?
Know your family first. Know how receptive they are. Know if they are open to something like this before you pursue somebody from a different ethnicity, because you don't want to start something and then you learn that your family is totally against it, right? You don't want to go against your family. But us on a personal level, we encourage it. If you know your family is open to it, we encourage interracial marriages. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, جعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. We made you into different people so you may get to know each other, right?
Exactly.
And not just live in your own bubble.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're all Muslims, so that should be our leading compass,
Right.
finding a good Muslim. But at the same time, I do realize it's not for everyone. Some people are
Family compatibility is important for a lot of
very
people.
important,
So
yeah,
it's not for everyone. I understand that.
Yeah.
But also realizing that ultimately it's you that's going to be spending the rest of your life with that person and not your parents. So there is a balance between involving your parents and assessing that family compatibility. But ultimately, is this person you're going to marry going in line with your values? Are they going to be a means of support for you and whatever your future goals and aspirations are? And so those are the deeper questions to be asking. And the differences of race and age and education, those will fall into place eventually.
Yeah. And honestly, it's very enriching marrying somebody from a different ethnicity. Like, you're exposed to a new culture, new food, new language, new habits, new clothing. Like, it is, we enjoy it personally, honestly.
I'm learning a lot of Arabic from her, which has been great.
I learned some Urdu as well, but I forgot it though.
I won't test you then.
Yeah, please don't.
Okay, inshallah, we're going to end off with asking, what's one thing that, Brother Zaid, we'll start with you. What's one thing that our audience can take away today?
The one thing I would say, whether you're a guy or a girl, is please start the search now, right? Please don't delay it. When I say start the search now, start that conversation with your parents, open that channel of conversation about the topic of marriage. If there's somebody you do have in mind, don't shy away from talking to your parents about it. Start the search now, don't delay it. And keep in mind what your values are, and don't treat marriage as some sort of status game or a business transaction, because that's not the case when it comes to Islam.
Jazakallah khair.
And I want to leave people with hope, a message of hope, regardless of how old you are, how many times you've been rejected or rejected people, how many times you thought it's going to work and it didn't work. Please hold on to hope. Keep knocking on doors and one will open up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already written our qadar, written what's meant for you, what's meant for me. So just keep being proactive and don't lose hope. Last thing we want is for some people to just decide, no, it's not meant for me. Let me just stay single, burn out, all of that. No, keep holding on hope.
And Jazakallah khair.
Waiyakum.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Zaid. Thank you so much for today's podcast. I learned so much. I told you guys, I found out last week and I was like, yes, I'm going to host this one. So yeah, Jazakallah khair.
Thank you for having us. We enjoyed it.
No problem. Jazakallah khair, Brother Kashif,
Yes, thank you, Brother Kashif.
as always, doing the best, producing and hosting. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Inshallah, we'll see you next week on our Happy Strong Family podcast.